Och vi ska stanna i Ukraina och ta en titt på vem är president Zelenskyj. Han är ju komikern som efter att ha spelat president i en tv-serie ställde upp i valet och kom att bli landsfadern som nu leder Ukraina genom kriget. Och jag intervjuade den franske journalisten Stéphane Siohan som sedan många år är bosatt i Ukraina. Han är medförfattare till en bok om Volodymyr Zelenskyj, I huvudet på en hjälte heter den. Och framträder en bild av en rätt välbärgad skådespelare med tidigare god relation till Ryssland som inte dragit sig för att skämta under bältet men som också vuxit till en nationalhjälte.
He was just one of the 2-3 biggest TV stars of the country, nothing less, nothing more. He became famous in the years 2000, both in Ukraine and Russia, after he founded a theater and I would say humor company called Kvartal 95. And Zelenskyj's team won a lot of humor competition in Russia. And in the middle of the year 2000, Zelenskyj and his friends came back to Ukraine after working a few years in Moscow, and he started to sign contracts with Ukrainian televisions. And Zelenskyj became in that way the big entertainer of Saturday evenings in Ukraine with comedy shows, very popular. I couldn't say that it was the sharpest or the most delicate humor I have seen in my life.
Was it political?
It was pretty vulgar, I have to say. I mean, it was a mix of observation of the society, political satire, and a lot of vulgar jokes.
One of the channels he was working for was owned by the oligarch Kolomoisky. Is he the mastermind behind his presidency?
Yes, actually a pact was made between the two men. I think that Igor Kolomoisky first used Volodymyr Zelenskyj as a troublemaker to make fun out of the Ukrainian political elite with a series called Servant of the People, which has been started in 2015. But the series worked probably much better than what its founder expected, because Ukrainians in that years were somehow very naive. They are always looking for someone new, for new faces, fresh faces. They are looking for politicians which could bring them closer to Europe and get rid out of those post-Soviet manners which they actually hate. And the president, starred by Zelenskyj in the series Servant of the People, became a sort of hologram of what Ukrainians actually wanted for a president.
So the key question here is this comedian, this rather vulgar comedian with no political ideas, no military experience, why did he manage to become the president?
I think he was the right man at the right place. I think that Zelenskyj belongs to a new generation of politicians which don't come from the establishment and who haven't made 20 years of career as apparatchiks in socialist or conservative parties, who have a career, who are self-made men, who are entrepreneurs, who have those liberal values. And he belongs actually to this generation of leaders like Macron, Justin Trudeau in Canada. I think there are also some similarities with new leaders in Scandinavia, in Finland. New faces. And I think the Ukrainians were really keen on this.
But that is interesting because you also write in the book that with his background, he could as well have turned out pro-Russian. What do you mean by that?
He grew up in the 1990s, terrible years, collapse of the Soviet Union, huge economical crisis. The two countries, Russia and Ukraine, were still very connected. Ukrainian people were watching Russian TV, were listening to Russian music. they had a lot of connection. The two societies had a lot of connection. And when Zelenskyj, after school years, decided to become famous, to become an actor, to create his theater company, when he actually became successful, the first thing he did is to go to Moscow. I mean, like someone from Belgium who would go to Paris in the 1980s. So it was very obvious that Moscow was a model for him at some point in his life. He had a lot of friends there. It was part of his world. After, eventually, he came back to Ukraine, and instead of becoming king of the Russian TV, he became a king of the Ukrainian TV. But until his election, he had a lot of connections to Russia. His Ukrainian was quite bad, actually, before the election. He was making a lot of mistakes in Ukrainian language. His productions on the TV were overwhelmingly Russian-speaking. He was famous in Russia. And I don't say that he's pro-Russian or that he tends to accept the Russian world. But he's someone who has never been influenced by any kind of Ukrainian nationalism. And the pure Ukrainian national cultural idea was not his model. And to finish, when he became a president, his mandate was to bring peace to Ukraine. And he said that he was ready to sit down with Vladimir Putin. He actually did, and it triggered a wider conflict.
So that was a crucial turning point maybe in his presidency. And also when the war broke out in February, when he decided to stay in Kyiv, how important was that?
It was the most important moment of the war, from a personal point of view for him, but also for the Ukrainian society. And he made this incredible video, I'm here, and I think it was exactly the signal that Ukrainians were waiting to start the resistance. I had some suspicions on Zelenskyj too, but I didn't have any suspicions on the capacity of resistance of the Ukrainians. They are amazing. They are the bravest country in Europe. But they needed a leader, they needed a trigger, and Zelenskyj gave them this trigger. He was very brave on that day.
So will Zelenskyj be the leader that takes Ukraine to a victory in this war?
I think so. If Ukraine will win the war and there will be elections next year, he will be for sure re-elected. The only mistake he could commit will be to sign a bad deal with Russia. If he sits at the table with Russia and he bends into the demands of Russia, the Ukrainian society will not forgive him.
Volodymyr Zelenskyj alltså i huvudet på en hjälte. Här kan ni läsa mer om hans bakgrund.